Long before the universities went into R&D, we said our multimedia super corridor is a watershed for R&D. But Dr. Mahathir himself was a man who, when he was Minister of Education, he was focusing on manipulative skills. And then he went into living skills. And then he spoke about design. And then he spoke about the multimedia super corridor. You see, politicians, like researchers, are learners. A young researcher beginning a master's or a doctoral degree is not at the end of all knowing. It's the beginning of knowing. And a researcher, like politicians, must know that they do not know. It took the Malaysian government 50 years before the government says the government does not know everything. The government does not know everything. Universities do not know everything. Researchers do not know everything. And once we accept that principle, then we can move forward. But for so long that we do not accept that principle, we're not going to be able to move forward in bold strides. Why we move to the K-based economy? I must tell you this. I was in Ghanaian Highlands before. I was the director of the National Institute of Educational Management and Leadership. I brought all my staff in so many buses to Putrajaya. It was only oil pumps and etc. And my staff were complaining, why does the director bring us to see this oil pump and whatever, but I brought them to see where they have the module, the time capsule kind of thing, the landmark for Putrajaya. And I told them in 5 years, it would be a city and there would be twin cities. They didn't believe me. I wanted to share with them the imagination, the moving forward. And those days, I went to Singapore and I saw the technology park in Singapore. And then near Bukit Jalil, near our Bukit Jalil Stadium, there was a technology park. And I was so happy to see our technology park. But before I could understand the technology park, there was already Cyberjaya and the digital park. And they have a Cyberjaya park, as a matter of fact. That's how things move. That's how knowledge becomes obsolete. That's how information becomes obsolete. That's how we have to understand why many of the research work that we do have very limited shelf life. I read those 400 odd PhD theses on education, and most of the theses are obsolete. Just like most of the articles will become obsolete in no time, unless, of course, we capture continuity, we capture the notion of sustainability, we see the connections and the interrelationships between past, present, and future, between the disciplines of the humanities and social sciences and natural sciences. We see what happens in our country in relation to what happens in the future and the past, and we dramatize the trivia. We dramatize the trivia, as I am going to dramatize it now. I like to shock, invite my students to be provoked by saying there is no difference between the DNA experts and the magician man, Merlin the magician man, and the Bomo, and all those, Bomo people. No difference between them and the DNA people. Because the Bomo will still want your hair and your nails and your private belongings where they can, and the DNA experts want your hair and your saliva and your private belongings. The difference is actually in the philosophy of what they do. The difference is actually in the methodology of what they do. The difference is actually in the equipment that they use. The difference is actually in whether research is public or research is made mysterious. When we talk about commercialization, there might be a contradiction regarding patents, regarding intellectual property rights. People in the religious field shudder if you claim intellectual property rights over the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, because the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the word of God is to be shared publicly. But it is a quiet knowledge, it is human-created knowledge, where people claim intellectual property rights for commercialization purposes. But herein reside the contradiction. The contradiction that knowledge must be made public, scientific knowledge must be open to be criticized. The methodology, all aspects of the methodology and the findings. But of course, we have the enrichment for the nuclear kind of debate, whether nations like Iran or Israel or the United States have the right to have nuclear weapons or use the nuclear sciences for the benefit of mankind. But the point I'm making in referring to the bomber and the DNA scientists, the point that I'm making in referring to military sciences which are kept secret and civilian sciences which are kept secret for commercialization purposes is that we have to be very clear about what we want research for. At which point of time would our research findings be for the good of mankind? And at which point of time would our research works become secret recipes for the originators, generators of those bodies of knowledge? So the point I was making again, which I'm trying to make connection, is that whatever we do, knowledge, you see, if you do something and that particular area of knowledge becomes obsolete, then you have lost everything. But if you relate what you do to some other disciplines, it is very unlikely it will become obsolete, because not everything will become obsolete in the jigsaw web of human life. So the knowledge economy master plan, the K economy does not become obsolete when we go into the innovation economy. I repeat, the K economy does not become obsolete when we go into the innovation economy. The P economy does not become obsolete when we go into the K economy. Why? Because we hold dear to ourselves the betterment of the human condition. That research is for the betterment of the human condition. That researchers are actually nation builders. That librarians are civilization builders. That what we do will somehow contribute to the greater understanding of where we came from where we are going. When Malaysia was independent, we had only about 6 million people. We are now almost 30 million people. When we were independent, there were very few families. Now, we have about 6 million families. Out of the 6 million families, and the various several thousand villagers, almost from every village, there's already someone who has gone to a university. When we were independent, in 1957, thereabouts. There were agriculturalists, fishermen, and the simple teachers, including religious teachers, and a few civil servants. But actually, and this is a fact not well known, we created a middle class.